Every person, without exception, is capable of doing the worst things just to live another minute.
Fire was coming out from the chimneys. This means everything was prepared. You see, this was a moment when Moshe Sonnenschein, the rabbi's son, spoke to his God. God showed them your power. This is against you. And nothing happened. And then he said, there is no God.
Released in 1973, The World at War is a 26-part series chronicling some of the major events of the Second World War. With its footage, interviews, pacing, and general even-handedness, I think it sets a benchmark by which all other Second World War documentaries, all other documentary series, might be forever measured.
Jewish Moscow directed domination.
The series, produced by Jeremy Isaacs, took 4 years to make, and at the time was the most expensive documentary series ever made, coming in at £880,000 in 1973. Its episodes each focus on different regions and periods of the war, first examining Germany before the war, and then dedicating episodes to subjects such as America and its reluctance to enter the war, the rise of expansionist Japan, Britain's mostly disastrous Norwegian campaign, the Blitz, the Holocaust, the terror and propaganda inside Germany, Burma, Stalingrad, the naval war, the air war, and the aftermath of it all.
And when night arrives, one of those very hot, noisy, bloody nights, the dogs plunge into the Volga and swim desperately to gain the other bank. People ate soap, linseed oil, the paste for wallpaper.
The occupiers were harsh, very harsh, especially in those areas where the partisans were active. In one village, Pisk, near Kiev, which was totally razed to the ground, babies were thrown into the fire.
Even with a total runtime of 22.5 hours, it obviously cannot fit everything in, but it does provide not only a comprehensive, but really multi-layered look at the war in an information-first, but squarely stylish way. With Carl Davis's evocative, haunting score, Laurence Olivier's dry, sometimes wry narration, and considered pacing, it paints the war rather uniquely, especially in comparison to the more generic examples of World War II documentaries that tend to sensationalize and mythologize so that it all feels as distant as the Roman Republic or something like that. Even 50 years later, with its depth, but also with its willingness to let things linger and to give certain statements or footage space, The World at War makes the Second World War feel very recent.
It's a curious thing. You could almost equate it to television today and what it's done to us in many ways. The realities of the situation, people are still wanting to sweep under the carpet. I mean, I turn around to my kids during the napalm bombing in Vietnam and I say, just don't sit there. You know, that is a real child, that burning torch running across a field. But it means nothing to them. The readjustment to their kind of life, the life that I led before myself, was virtually impossible, because however much you hate being in a war, the things that you come back to seem very, very trivial.
The World at War is not just a list or account of things that happened, but more a Bayeux-sized tapestry of agony that effectively makes a case for why things happened, how they were allowed to happen, and what the hell people were thinking. It is especially compelling in this regard because of its multiple perspectives, and indeed its access to them. We have interviews with German Nazis, anti-Nazi Germans, Japanese soldiers disgusted by the dropping of the bomb, Japanese politicians who argue that the bomb ultimately ended the war early and saved lives, dignitaries, generals, fighter pilots, But the interviews offered are not only military or political, but often voice the perspective of the bystander, unwitting victim or collaborator, as much as the direct participants and decision-makers. Inevitably, the series is told from an Allied perspective. There are numerous Japanese and German perspectives and stories, but it certainly does not give a voice to pro-Nazi, pro-imperial corners. But it does approach many parts of the war with occasional moral ambiguity that allows the viewer to form their own opinions in a way that generally feels very fair, especially for a program made so close to its subject. No, it doesn't ask was Hitler right, but it does ask in its roundabout way of offering opposing, or at least not totally aligned opinion. Could the war have been averted? Were the British right to bomb the slaughterhouse out of Dresden? Were the Allies ever allies at all, or just competitors? Was Mussolini really an idiot, or was it all just an act? Did Churchill say Norway, or no way? No way.
Stalin at the Yalta Conference, which was attended by President Roosevelt and Mr. Churchill, said that he thought that 50,000 of the German general staff and officers should be gathered together and summarily executed. He wasn't joking.
I think The World at War is one of, if not the, most compelling historical documentary due to its superb handling, and it being split into broadly chronological, but still temporally overlapping episodes that really allow the viewer to appreciate the scale of the war. But what I think makes it not just a brilliant piece of factual storytelling, but irreplicable, is the time it was made. It went into production less than 25 years after the war ended, and I would guess that window of about 20 to 30 years after the event is to a certain extent the unscientific sweet spot. Enough time has passed that the interviewees have a certain distance between their own experiences and the subject matter, but at the same time, the war is recent enough that we can listen to what direct participants experienced, remember thinking at the time, and think now. All told without fear of allowing the telling to linger when appropriate, again compared to many modern documentaries that think I won't pay attention unless everything is cut into 5-second sound bites. Almost like they respect my mental capacity, or at least don't think I'm a complete Churchill at 3 AM on a Friday night.
I'll have you know that Norway was a great success.
I've watched The World at War all the way through several times throughout my life. When I was a lad, the most impactful episodes for me were the ones about the terrible battles, the atrocities, and the terror of it all. How awful Stalingrad must have been for everyone involved. How frightening it must have been to be a Jew hiding in Holland, or a Belarusian watching your country be devoured, or a Japanese watching parts of your city disappear. These aspects are still deeply impactful, and even now, with my mental back catalogue full of other terrible, real things I've seen, the often graphic footage still resonates and still pricks through the post-internet callous. It has some truly remarkable and sometimes very graphic footage, the likes of which I can't show you here. At the same time, there's a huge amount of footage on display that isn't traditionally graphic, but has very much the same effect.
American fighter bombers roamed at will, backing up the devastating fire rates.
But on my most recent viewing, I find the real dread, the horror if you like, is found in the build-up. If you only watch one episode of this series, I would argue that it should be the first one. The one I would have once thought was the most boring, because it doesn't have any actual war in it. The delusion, denial, the accepting Hitler through deep, quiet desperation is, for me, more chilling than the appalling things that followed. How could the Germans fall for this? How could they not see through it? Where did they think this would go? How did they think it would end? Not unlike Downfall, I think the world at war is very successful in circumventing Hitler as a myth and the Nazis as a historical oddity, and with that, I think it might be one of the most unsettling pieces of media I can think of. For me, The World at War is a masterpiece of both documentary filmmaking and storytelling. You can tell this project was very important to Jeremy Isaacs and the others involved in its production. Despite its terrible story and haunting telling, it feels made with love.
I knew later that they were caught buying a ticket at a railway station and were transported to Auschwitz. And why I say this is the most painful and terrible story for me to have to tell was because after they left, I realized that Hitler had turned me into a murderer.
A dictatorship is like a snake. If you put your foot on its tail, as you do it, it will just bite you.
A sense I get from The World at War, especially at the end, is that the producers were acutely aware that one day the first-hand accounts of the Second World War would be lost, and that The World at War was made, at least in part, to stymie a perennial danger. I also get the sense that, although that was part of it, they also knew that such an attempt would inevitably be a lost cause. That's just my reading of it. You know, just me, Mr. Optimistic. Give it a go. It's available on the Internet Archive for free. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, Patreon, Facebook me on the MySpace, dig me and stumble upon, 5 stars, and see you next time.
I like how you're the teachers of beaches. We will find them on the beaches, we will find them in the Wetherspoons, and we will hide them in the cottages of Hampstead Heath. Of course, I don't understand. We want to be a priest. I have Karl Puff Puff.